To many young and naive employees, organizational politics is either something to be laughed at or something to be disgusted by. A more mature perspective is to understand that the ethics of political behavior in the workplace depends on the context of when, where, how, and why it's used. I argue that an executive's efficacy requires political savvy. Political competency predicts management success better than any other leadership competency. If you want to transform your organization into the next phase of business performance, then you need to understand how to stay agile, adapt to dynamic environmental circumstances, and effectively manage change. That's basically being politically savvy in a nutshell. In today's episode, I'll share with you a few common descriptions of what I hear my clients say about organizational politics and how that fits with my personal perspective as a change management and org development consultant. Let's get to work.
Navigating business politics, mapping your path to power. You're listening to the Durable Leadership Podcast. Here's your host, John Lamb.
A few weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a couple of clients about their perspective on organizational politics, because this is something that I frequently do. As a change management and org development consultant, I have to touch base with my clients on their perspective and get their temperature read on how things are going inside of their departments. And generally, with these particular clients, they gave me a very cynical response. They said that only those who are playing the back channels, horse trading, wheeler dealers, are the ones that succeed in organizational politics. And that brought up a question in my mind. Does this realistically show a picture of how organizational politics actually plays out at all levels of the organization, or only among the top tier executives? Or is it only inside of this particular organization that I was consulting for? Well, I'm going to argue that the latter perspective, that organizational politics is very circumstantial, I'm going to argue for that perspective. And that the political behavior, not only is it circumstantial, in certain cases, it can help with the successful implementation of change and innovation in the organization. That's right, I said it. I believe that being politically savvy is critical for effectiveness of the organization. It's critical to drive the organization forward to achieve its own objectives. Yes, it's true that those who play politics, when done well, can find success for their own careers. But broadly speaking, what I want to argue in today's episode and in the next few episodes to follow is that organizational politics is vital for the health of the organization. That's a big claim, I know. Now, the common perspectives that I hear about organizational politics comes in two different forms. There are two camps of individuals who give me responses. I mean, generally speaking, right? Two different camps of individuals who talk to me about their opinions, perspectives, and views on organizational politics. The first is a group of individuals who see organizational politics as hilarious. This is because they see the enormous uphill battle that they are confronted with, meaning there are other individuals in the organization that have more power, they have more influence, they have more connections, deeper relationships, all of these things that for the average employee seems like an insurmountable task. It seems impossible for them to compete against other individuals who have this enormous war chest of political capital. So what do? They just laugh it off because you know the old saying, I laugh to keep from crying. That's really what they're doing. They're laughing at organizational politics out of a deeper sense of hopelessness. That's really why they laugh at it. Because when they see something happening behind the scenes, they shrug their shoulders and they just say, office politics as usual. What are you going to do about it? Life in corporate America. Am I right? That's one perspective of organizational politics. The other camp comes to me and says organizational politics is damaging, it's hurtful, it's harmful to the organization. Now, this is a group of individuals who don't necessarily feel hopeless, but they feel a sense of moral indignation. They feel that their moral compass is violated when they see something wrong happening. They wish they could do something about it, but more than anything, they're angry. These are some common perspectives because this is how, in our culture, we're taught to view organizational politics. From TV shows and movies, we are shown the worst cases. Let me rephrase that. We are shown caricatures of what life is like in leadership of large, complex organizations. Making leadership decisions in these complex bureaucracies that we work for, and yes, they are bureaucracies, as much as we want to say that our modern organizations are flatter, more nimble, more agile, more people-focused. The bigger the organization is, the more complex the procedures need to be to manage all of the activities and resources of the organization. So, of course, they're bureaucracies. And to make decisions for these larger, big, lumbering bureaucracies requires the understanding of trade-offs in the face of finite resources. More on that to come. This is the reality. Making leadership decisions at the highest levels is not easy, but we're shown humorous, cartoonish depictions of what leadership decisions are like. But if people think this topic is funny, if you look at organizational politics and laugh it off, because I get it, I empathize, because you feel like it's just too difficult emotionally to deal with, that's fine. But not taking it seriously makes it impossible for you to make any change. And organizational politics is not going away. Now, the combination of all of that, it being something that is ever present, but seldomly taken seriously, makes it difficult for me as a change management org development consultant to break into the psyche of the average middle manager to get them to understand that, hey, you need to engage and build relationships and nurture your network. In other words, you need to play politics if you have ambitions to rise in the ranks and have great influence in the organization. It's very difficult for me to make that case. Because of this, there isn't a whole lot of evidence in the academic literature. There isn't a whole lot of studies in the academic literature on organizational politics. I'm going to share with you everything I know, okay? I wrote my dissertation on this topic, how senior executives accumulate, protect, and use their political capital. That was what I wrote my dissertation on. So I know that the body of knowledge on this particular aspect of leadership is very thin. I mean, thin compared to the rest of the subdomains of leadership. When we talk about social intelligence, emotional intelligence, when we talk about transformational leadership, transactional leadership, when we talk about all these other aspects of leadership, of which, if you are interested in the deeper topics of leadership, go check out durableleadershiplibrary.com. We have articles upon articles about almost any aspect of leadership you can think of. durableleadershiplibrary.com. Compared to the rest of leadership, this particular subdomain of organizational politics is a challenge to do research on and to get peer-reviewed papers about. But that doesn't mean there are none. So I will share with you what I do know. Okay, generally, people have a negative view of organizational politics. They think it's a waste of time and energy. And generally, they think damage is done to the organization when anyone engages in it. Now, even though there may be benefits to political behavior, some of my clients point out that work in organizational politics is working in an environment with organizational politics is it's difficult because not only do you have to manage your own responsibilities, deliver the results that your boss has expected of you, but you also have to manage this web of other relationships with other people, from your peers to your subordinates to other individuals who are higher up in the hierarchy than you are, that you have to manage their expectations about. So it's not just leading the group of that's on your team. It's not just about that vertical leadership. It's about managing up as well. It's about managing out, leading horizontally. And it's about managing and leading diagonally. That is, the individuals who are not directly in your organization, but you have sometimes dotted line reporting to, or they have dotted line reporting to you. You have to lead them. And then you have to report up to people that you have dotted line reports to. It's a very complex web. Playing all of that, I get it. It's difficult. It's difficult to deal with. Most people see organizational politics as just bad, right? They see the bad side of politics. It's made up of destructive opportunism, selfish interests, hidden agendas, ulterior motives. These are the terms that I hear very often with almost every single conversation. I don't like it when the directors and VPs and everyone else in the C-suite play games. Oh, that's a big term. They're playing games. Machiavellian. When you hear that when you hear that label attached to somebody, it's not a compliment. That guy is Machiavellian. That's a bad thing. It's never a good thing. Organizational politics, the strategies that are used are definitely unpleasant as the perception goes. Let me share with you a few more words that I hear from some of my clients that they associate with organizational politics. It's evil. It's corruption. I even heard one guy call organizational politics blasphemous. He has a particular viewpoint, a particular worldview, which is why he used that word. We'll save that conversation for another day. In one meeting I had with a couple of clients, we had a conversation, as, again, I am known to do, with these clients, and we talked about organizational politics, and they said it's dipping into the dark side of management. Now, these are a couple of guys who are very sober about their leadership, and they understand that in certain cases, what they called dipping into the dark side is necessary. But nevertheless, that's the way that they described it. It's using back channels and shadow engagement. Never thought I would hear that term by highly respected executives, but that's what they told me. It's using shadow engagement to get things done. Another client talked to me about organizational politics, and she described it as an organizational disease, a workplace disease. Now, not surprisingly, some of these clients that have this perspective are very emotionally charged up about it. They see managers who play politics as being disconnected to the feelings, the outcomes, the emotional ties of their employees. So they see anyone who plays organizational politics, based on their perspective and description, as individuals who care only about themselves and not the actual outcomes of everyone else on the team, or not the actual effects of everyone else on the team. This is a hard topic to talk about when I'm in my consulting engagements, when I'm on site and having these conversations, because I got to watch behind my back and look over my shoulders and ask them these difficult questions and say, hey, what's the true motive of why Jerry over in accounting said or did that other thing? You know, these are very difficult topics to talk about. It's sensitive because it reveals actions, motivations, and behaviors that not everyone is free to discuss. So it's very difficult to get honest answers. When I have these conversations, what I want to do is get the truth from them, get facts. I want to get what needs to be done, why they want that done, how they want it done. These are the components of understanding organizational behavior. These are the facts that I'm trying to look for. I play journalist to look for the who, what, why, when, where, and how of certain behaviors. But it's hidden behind a veil of other obfuscations, other reasons that they give me for why something should be done or not done. Now, management in general and our analysis of politically motivated behavior when it comes to management is rather difficult to ascertain, right? We've already established that. The key aspect that we need to tap into is, does the political behavior have realistic ties to the performance of the organization as a whole? Not the individuals that are narrowly impacted by the political behavior, but does it have positive, productive impact into the broader organization as a whole? Because every single one of these anecdotes, and that's really what they are, that I have gathered from all of my clients, every single one of those words that are reported back to me that I just shared with you are individual stories, individual perspectives, a person standing from one vantage point, seeing another person acting a particular way, and then casting their interpretation on that, or projecting their values on that individual and that behavior. This is what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error. What we're doing is saying that I see that behavior, and based on my constructed value system that I have in my mind, this is why I believe that person is doing that thing. But our own value system that we have in our minds may or may not perfectly align with the value system that the other person has in their mind. Let me say that a different way. The incentive matrix that we've built for ourselves, the incentive matrix that works for us, that we hold in our mind, is not identical to the incentive matrix that the other person has. And it may be impossible for us to understand the benefits minus costs equals utility formula that the other person holds in their head. That's a fact. So us pinning our interpretation of why somebody does what they do on them is the fundamental attribution error. So we can take all of that information, all of those words that are given to us as descriptors of organizational politics. We can take that, appreciate it, digest it, but the real research question is, does political behavior have positive, productive outcomes to the organization at large, not solely to the people that are impacted by that political behavior, be that good or bad? That's really what we want to get to. Researching politics of an organization, like I just said, has its own challenges. Organizational gatekeepers can turn us down for requests. I've experienced this as someone who tried to go find data on organizational politics, on political behaviors inside of big brands that you know, to small little mom and pop shops, leadership at all levels. Finding information is difficult because executives have other people that help them manage their time. So just getting access to them is difficult. And managers may not tell the whole story of all the tactics they use to a stranger, just some researcher, just some outside consultant who wants to take that information and make it public on the web. Who wants to disclose that, right? So these problems have been studied by very few academics. And when they do so, it's kind of from a distance, kind of from safe research methods like self-reporting questionnaires, like respondents getting a consensus of responses from a 360 set of observers, from indirect studies of attitudes and stress levels of the people who are impacted by the political behaviors. You see what I'm saying? We're trying to triangulate political behavior of senior executives because we can't directly ask these executives what they are doing and why they are doing it. They will not be honest with us. If we're going about this and we want to be scientific about this, we have to do our best to understand how to triangulate it and then disclose the fact that this is only a triangulation in hopes of getting in the vicinity of what organizational politics is. What I'm trying to communicate to you is that this is not an easy thing to research. Now, this method has limitations, for sure, but we can still learn something from it. I don't want to let you down, let you believe that there's nothing to be gleaned from the papers and the books and all the body of knowledge that we know about organizational politics. It's still useful, but it is not as direct as other domains of leadership. There's a negative stereotype surrounding this academic approach because it's not very objective. It's very subjective. So those who study the hard sciences, the natural sciences, those who study mathematics, and even those who write about philosophy have a very sour taste in their mouth about studies of politics. This is always going to be the case, right? Students from the natural sciences buildings at universities kind of look down on students of the social sciences buildings at universities. We're friends, colleagues, we get along somewhat, but in their minds, there is a pecking order of scientific rigor when it comes to what they do versus what we do. And that's fine. That's fine. You know, as one of my professors says, yeah, they can do math, but guess what? We can write. I don't know what that has to do with this, but it's just something that just popped into my head. So one of my clients told me that the idea that organizations are political is a myth that is spread to entertain those who hunger and crave for more deeper conspiratorial explanations of what executives do. This is a guy who himself has risen the ranks of the organization and retired as the CEO of the company. So he has absolutely been successful. But this is to illustrate once again that maybe there is a bias there in what these high-level leaders are telling us or not telling us. He says it's entertainment, right? Guys like me and what we do when we talk about organizational politics, what we're really doing is trying to influence a particular audience to believe in a thing that doesn't really exist. It's a myth. That's the word I was looking for. He says organizational politics is a myth. It's not real because leadership in business, unlike leadership, in government agencies? He says leadership in business is about demonstrable metrics, objective metrics. All right, that's fine. But let me push back on that perspective just a little bit. And he and I actually had this conversation. Is it ever possible to get 100% of the data that you need to make a decision? The answer, of course, is no. And even if you did get 100% of that data to make a particular decision, how quickly does that data set go stale, right? What I'm saying is you can say you make decisions on rationality, on logic, on empirical data, but we all know that executives make decisions on an incomplete set of data. 70, 80, 85, 90% of all of the data is available at any given time by the time you need to make that decision. So what do you use to fill in the remainder of that 30, 20, 10%? What do you use? You use your own political intuition to balance the different interests of other stakeholders in the organization, from your boss to your team, to your peers, to your relationships with vendors and suppliers, you are balancing the interests that is not on a spreadsheet. You're balancing all of these competing interests to fill in the gap of that remaining 30, 20, 10%, whatever it is. And then you make a decision. So anybody who tells you that organizational politics is a myth is trying to keep you from understanding how to play the game. They're keeping you from engaging in organizational politics because by doing that, by calling organizational politics a myth, they are retaining power for themselves. A couple of other clients of mine argue that organizational politics in top management at the highest levels of the organization, these guys are telling me that it's actually linked to poor company performance. And I will concede that that does play out in certain cases. Yes, it can be the case that bad politics makes the organization less flexible because, let's face it, when someone or a certain body of decision makers has too much power and they want to retain status quo because that's in their best interest, then they make the entire organization less flexible. So when they hold the power to resist change, then yeah, playing politics or them playing politics does make the entire organization less productive. It makes it hard for other people to talk to cross functions. It slows down the flow of information. Organizational politics sometimes can be time consuming. These are two clients of mine that I greatly respect. And they do have a point. But my counterpoint to that particular conversation that I had with these clients is that, yes, organizational politics can make the organization less flexible, right? It can make it difficult for information to flow, right? It can be very time consuming. But what you need to understand is the way to solve that problem is not to shrug your shoulders and capitulate and just say, there's nothing to be done and laugh it off and see organizational politics, office politics as just another humorous thing in this comedy/tragedy we call life in corporate America. No, the way to solve that problem is to get more power. We solve these problems by getting more power. The way to solve the problem of bad politics is to get power and play good politics. Those particular clients, when I said that, had the aha moment. I've said this before in other videos. The way to stop a bad executive with power is to be a good executive with more power. Let me clarify that because I don't want that to be confused with other narratives. Power in politics does not have to be violent. It does not have to be coercive. It does not have to be nefarious. Playing organizational politics does not mean that you have to threaten anyone else with damaging outcomes, with severe consequences. There is a wide variety of different ways to play politics in the workplace. The limitations of organizational politics is your imagination. That's it. This is where what I do and what my team does helps other executives. We help generate creative ideas on how to reshape, recontextualize what they do, why they do it, and how they do it with new workflows, new reporting structures, new policies and procedures that slowly bring our clients more power, more political capital. We build political machines inside of the organization that slowly, not forcefully, slowly draw in the political capital that our clients want. This requires creativity, imagination, innovation on understanding organizational behavior, processes, workflows, all the boring stuff of living life in corporate America, all of the bureaucratic nonsense that we all shy away from, that isn't sexy leadership. We help design redesign their organization. That's the org development part of what I do, and help bring about that change, transferring their department, their organization from state A to state B, and manage that change. That's the change management part of what I do. Organizational politics does not have to be an inhibitor to organizational performance. It can be very productive. We're going to continue to talk about that in future episodes of the Durable Leadership Podcast. But for now, I want to leave you with that. I want to leave you with the idea that organizational politics is something that we need to embrace. The perspective that organizational politics is something to be laughed at because this life that we live in corporate America is a hilarious comedy that we can just shrug our shoulders at because there's nothing else we can do. That perspective is for those who are recently graduated from business school. In other words, it's naive. It's naive. The other perspective of those who are angry at organizational politics. They're angry that executives play politics and harm the rest of the organization. That perspective is one more step in the right direction, but we're still not exactly there. Because seeing the change that needs to be done, but not knowing how to create that change, most importantly, not knowing how to accumulate the power you need to create that change, is the difference between being a mediocre manager or a durable leader. That's what I want for you guys. Thanks for joining me on this podcast, on the Durable Leadership Podcast. Stick with me. We are going to dig deeper into the topic of organizational politics as we discussed. And on the next episode, we're going to talk about how this actually works, why organizational politics actually does help the organization get things done. For now, I'm John Lamb. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time. Take care.